So as I showed in the previous video, I've recently given this a hard prune because this money plant hasn't been touched for probably about 4 years, hasn't had anything done to it. So it's in a little poorly state. It's had a hard prune now, and if I left it, it would regrow, but it would be quite slow and it wouldn't do too well because the soil's really lost all its nutrients. And also you can see it hasn't been dusted in years, if ever actually. So there's a lot of dust now on the leaves, and so that's going to be impeding the sunlight. So I'll give this a rinse off at some point to get some of the dust off, but there's not too many leaves, so I'm not too worried about that. The main thing is the root system. It's been struggling a bit in this pot. As you can see, it's quite damp. The roots are all dead. There's not really any active roots in there. It's just too wet. You can see it's really soggy. It's just pure peat compost, which is not good. So I need to remove as much of this compost as I can because it's just been too damp and the roots have been rotting off constantly, so this plant hasn't been growing well. So I'll just peel it all off until I can find a good base to start with, find some roots that are still healthy and have some life in them. I'm also going to try and peel away a little bit from the surface, because the surface here will help show a bit more flare of the trunk, and that will make it look a bit more like a bonsai because the trunk will be even wider. But there is a limit to how far I can peel this back. I don't want to expose too many roots, just want to expose a bit more of the flare of the tree. And actually there's a nice root here, it's quite a big root, so that's fine to expose. If it was a small root it would dry off and die, but a big one like this is actually quite nice, and it will actually be a nice little feature to have a large root there. So I will peel that off. You can see here there's an old dead root, it's a bit rotten, and I'm still struggling to find any healthy roots, unfortunately. So it's obviously been overwatered in the past, but that's mainly because the compost it was in was just pure peat. You can see here in the base there's some mouldy compost which is soil based, which is a little bit better for it, but still it's quite a bit of clay in there and it's not very free draining, to be honest. So there we are, that's all that's left of the roots. To be honest, that whole pot, it was a big pot, but there's very few roots in it. They're all rotted off. Just a few stuck in the top here, where you can see some root bound from a previous pot. It looks like it was quite square, so this could actually fit really nicely in a bonsai tray. But I'm going to have a look now, see what other kind of pots I have available for it, what it would look nice in. And I've still got more soil to take away, to be honest, because all this is pretty terrible stuff for a money plant to be in, because it is a bit too water retaining. Let's get something more free draining, and I'm getting through a lot of rotten roots here, so I just need to keep digging down until I get some good fresh and healthy roots. So there we are, I think that's the best I'll get it. As you can see, there's not any small healthy roots, just thick old roots. Some of them are alive, some of them are a bit dead, but there's no feeder roots or anything, so it will take a little while for it to get established again. But these thicker roots, once they dry out a little bit and aren't waterlogged, they should sprout some new fresh shoots, because money plants are very good at re-rooting themselves. So I'll go away now and I'll get some super pot for this, and also some better free draining compost. So after a bit of searching, the best pot I could really find in my parents was this pot here. It would have looked nice if it had a nice little bonsai pot, but it looks a lot nicer than that plastic one that it did have. And there's still quite a bit of space for it to grow roots. I mean, it's not going to sit any deeper than that, and there's plenty of space under it for fresh root growth. So compost wise, I'm a little bit limited here to my resources, but basically I've used the topsoil in my parents, which is a very rich dark topsoil. There's a lot of organic matter, it's very good, but it's very sandy as well, so it's quite free draining, and any of the nutrients does get leached out very quickly. So to remedy that, I put a little bit of peat in the mix, and then just to make sure that it stays quite free draining, I also added two large handfuls of perlite to this to keep it nicely free drained. See there, that's what we're working with. This is bone dry at the moment, which is why it looks like this, but I will need to water it. It won't look like that when it's wet. So I'll just pot this up, and it should do really well in here. Haven't added any feed to this, so I need to add a little bit of liquid feed probably once I've potted it up. It's winter though, so I don't want to be giving it much feed at the moment. So I'll just get the height about right, which I think is there. Fill in the rest hopefully. Spread it round. As I say, I want to bury it a little bit less than last time because of the the trunk looks a lot nicer if I can expose a little bit more of that. There we are, that's it in its new pot. All that it requires now is a nice sauce to go with it, a bit of a white round so it doesn't look so dirty. And hopefully, as I say, once it's had a little bit of feed, should put its new roots down and should grow into quite a nice bonsai as long as it's tweaked every now and again just as the new growth comes through.